John looked out the window of his ship, the Aurora, as it hurtled through the vastness of space. The stars outside seemed to blur into streaks of light, a testament to the incredible speed at which they were traveling. He had always dreamed of exploring the unknown, but this mission was different. It was fraught with danger and uncertainty. The desert planet Zyrra was a mix of orange and red under the light of two suns. The landscape was both alien and mesmerizing, with vast stretches of sand dunes and rocky outcrops. The twin suns cast long shadows, creating an eerie yet beautiful scene. John couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation as he gazed upon the planet. His ship, the Aurora, creaked and groaned as Zyrra's gravity pulled it down. Warning lights blinked furiously on the control panel, signaling the ship's distress. The descent was rough, and John could feel the strain on the ship's structure. The once smooth ride had turned into a turbulent and nerve-wracking experience. "Darn it!" John muttered, getting ready for a crash. He tightened his grip on the controls, his knuckles turning white. The ship shuddered violently, and he could hear the metal groaning under the pressure. He knew that a crash landing was inevitable, and he braced himself for the impact. Boom! The Aurora smashed into the sand dunes, throwing John against the controls. The impact was jarring, and he felt a sharp pain in his side. The ship skidded to a halt, sending a cloud of sand and debris into the air. John struggled to catch his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He blinked, a little dizzy as the smell of burning metal filled the cockpit. The air was thick with smoke, and he could hear the faint crackling of small fires. His vision was blurry, and he felt disoriented. He knew he had to act quickly to assess the damage and ensure his survival. Outside, the broken ship hissed, slowly disappearing under the sand. The once mighty Aurora was now a twisted wreck, half buried in the desert. The harsh winds of Zyrra began to cover the ship with fine grains of sand, as if trying to erase any evidence of its existence. John felt a pang of sadness as he looked at the remains of his vessel. John stumbled out, looking at the strange new world. The heat was intense and the air was dry and thin. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The landscape stretched out before him, vast and unforgiving. He felt a mix of fear and excitement as he took his first steps on Zyrra. Two figures stood out against the setting suns. They were silhouetted against the bright light, their forms tall and slender. John squinted, trying to make out more details. The figures seemed to be watching him, their presence both intriguing and unsettling. They were tall and thin, with skin as smooth and dark as polished stone. Their eyes glinted in the fading light, and their movements were fluid and graceful. John had never seen anything like them before. They seemed almost otherworldly, like beings from a distant dream. They moved with a strange grace, their steps light and deliberate. It was as if they were gliding across the sand, barely disturbing the surface. John watched in awe, captivated by their elegance. He wondered what kind of beings they were and what their intentions might be. John had never seen anything like them. His mind raced with questions. Who were they? What did they want? Were they friendly or hostile? He felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension as he stood there, unsure of what to do next. He raised his hand in greeting, hoping to convey a sense of peace. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for their response. The aliens paused, their eyes fixed on him. John held his breath, wondering if they would understand his gesture. "Help," he croaked, his throat dry. The word came out as a raspy whisper, barely audible. He felt a wave of desperation wash over him. He needed their assistance, but he had no idea if they could or would help him. The figures looked at each other, their faces hidden by fancy headdresses. The ornate designs on their headgear glinted in the light, adding an air of mystery to their appearance. They seemed to communicate silently, their expressions unreadable. John felt a little scared. The uncertainty of the situation weighed heavily on him. He was alone, far from home, and at the mercy of these enigmatic beings. He tried to stay calm, but the fear gnawed at the edges of his mind. He was alone, hurt, and stuck on a planet that was both beautiful and dangerous. The reality of his predicament began to sink in. He had no way of knowing what lay ahead, and the thought of surviving on this alien world seemed daunting. These two aliens, with their watching eyes and silent communication, were his only hope. John knew that his fate was now intertwined with theirs. He could only hope that they would choose to help him, and that he would find a way to survive on this strange and wondrous planet. The taller alien tilted her head, her silver eyes looking John over. Her gaze was intense, almost as if she was trying to read his thoughts or understand his very essence. John felt a shiver run down his spine, unsure of what to make of this silent scrutiny. He felt a mix of fear and curiosity. The fear was natural given the circumstances, but the curiosity was stronger. He had always been fascinated by the unknown, and now he was living it. His heart raced as he wondered what these beings wanted from him. Their language, full of clicks and whistles, was totally new to him. It was unlike anything he had ever heard before, a complex symphony of sounds that seemed to convey more than just words. He tried to pick up on any patterns, but it was all too foreign. "I'm John," he tried, pointing to himself. "John!" He repeated his name, hoping that repetition might help bridge the gap. His voice sounded small and uncertain in the vastness of this alien landscape. The shorter alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was a strange, almost musical noise, and John couldn't tell if it was friendly or mocking. He decided to take it as a good sign, a small step towards understanding. John felt frustrated. They didn't understand him. He tried to think of other ways to communicate, but nothing seemed to work. The language barrier was a wall he couldn't climb, and it left him feeling helpless. He was stuck with no way to talk to them, no way to ask for help. The isolation was overwhelming, a heavy weight on his shoulders. He had never felt so alone, even though he was surrounded by these strange beings. The taller alien pointed to the broken ship, her face hard to read. John followed her gaze, realizing that the ship was the key to their interest. He wondered if they saw it as a threat or a curiosity. John understood. They wanted to see the ship. He nodded, trying to convey that he would show them. It was a small victory, a moment of clarity in the confusion. He led them through the twisted metal, the sand crunching under their feet. The ship was a wreck, but it was his only connection to home. He hoped it would help them understand his situation. They moved like cats, every step showing they were powerful. Their grace was mesmerizing, a stark contrast to the harsh environment around them. John couldn't help but admire their physical prowess. John felt like they were judging him, deciding if he was good or bad. Their eyes seemed to pierce through him, weighing his worth. It was an uncomfortable feeling, but he stood his ground, hoping to prove himself. He hoped they saw a friend, not an enemy. He tried to project friendliness and openness, a silent plea for acceptance. In this strange land he needed allies, and he hoped these beings could become just that. Days on Zyrra were super hot, the two suns baking the sand until it shimmered. John's skin was burnt, his supplies were running low, and he struggled to keep up with the alien women. He didn't know their names, so he called the taller one with silver eyes Luna, and the other one with gold eyes Sol. They talked with gestures and looks, a silent language John was slowly learning. Luna was a good hunter, catching desert lizards with a long curved weapon. Sol was good at finding water hidden under the sand. John, used to his comfy spaceship, felt useless. He needed to show them he was helpful, not just someone they had to take care of. After what felt like forever, they found an oasis. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, giving shade from the hot suns. A pool of clear water shimmered. John gasped, his throat dry and scratchy. Luna and Sol looked just as happy as he was. They drank a lot of water, their faces showing how tough and beautiful their world was. As they rested, John noticed a change. Luna, usually serious and quiet, smiled, showing surprisingly sharp teeth. Sol, usually silent, started to hum a pretty but sad song. For the first time, John felt hopeful. They were surviving. More importantly, they were becoming friends, making a connection even though they were so different. Night on Zyrra was amazing. The two moons, one silver and one emerald green, made the dunes glow. Strange, glowing plants lit up the desert with a magical light. But it was all a trick. When it got cold, the desert became full of dangerous animals. John sat by the fire, listening to scary howls in the darkness. Luna and Sol, not bothered by the danger, took turns watching. John watched them, their faces lit by the fire. Luna, her silver eyes shining in the moonlight, seemed to be thinking hard. Sol sharpened her blade, her movements quick and careful. John wished he was as strong as they were, as connected to this harsh and beautiful world. A low rumble shook the ground like a faraway storm. Luna stood still, her eyes searching the horizon. "Sandworms," she hissed, her voice a low growl. John had heard stories about sandworms, huge creatures that lived under the sand coming out when they felt movement. He felt a rush of fear. The sand exploded. A giant head as big as John's escape pod rose from the dunes. Its mouth, full of sharp teeth, opened wide. John scrambled back, fear making him move fast. Luna and Sol, moving like lightning, pulled out their weapons and charged, two warriors facing a monster. The fight was a crazy mix of sand and anger. Luna and Saul fought harder than you'd think. John, using his laser pistol, shot at the sandworm, his heart racing. He watched in amazement as Luna, super fast, cut through the sandworm's eye with her blade. The creature roared in pain, moving wildly. John felt hopeful. They could do this. They could live. He shot again, hitting the worm. The sandworm, badly hurt, went back under the sand, leaving a trail of blood and dust. Days later, John, Luna, and Saul stood by the broken Aurora. John had fixed enough of it to send a help message. He looked at Luna and Saul, their faces tired, their eyes showing new respect. They had saved each other many times in the past week. As a rescue ship came down from the sky, John felt a little sad. He came to Zyrra to explore, to find new life. He found it not in strange creatures or plants, but in the loyalty and strength of two alien women. He was leaving Zyrra, but a part of him would always stay there. The rescue ship flew away from Zyrra, the engines humming softly as it cut through the thin atmosphere. John stood by the window, his eyes fixed on the shrinking desert planet below. The vast, arid landscape that had been his home for so long was now just a speck in the distance. The desert planet getting smaller and smaller, fading into the blackness of space. He could still feel the heat of the twin suns on his skin, the grit of the sand between his fingers. John watched the two suns set, their golden light casting long shadows across the dunes. It was a sight he had seen countless times, yet it never failed to take his breath away. He thought about Luna and Saul, standing on the dunes watching him go. Their silhouettes were etched into his memory, a constant reminder of the bond they shared. He had asked them to come with him, to leave the harsh desert behind and start anew, but they had refused. Their home was Zyrra, their connection to the desert too strong to break. John smiled, remembering their last moments together. The laughter, the tears, the promises made under the twin suns. It was a bittersweet memory, one that he would carry with him always. A silent nod, a touch of hands, a promise to see each other again someday. These small gestures spoke volumes, conveying a depth of emotion that words could never capture. They had faced danger together, weathered countless storms, and emerged stronger for it. Their bond was forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by the harsh realities of life on Zyrra. They had faced danger together, standing side by side against the elements and the unknown. It was a bond that went beyond friendship, beyond family. And now they were connected forever, their spirits intertwined like the roots of the desert plants that clung to life in the barren soil. It was a connection stronger than family, a bond that had been tested and proven in the crucible of the desert. A connection that didn't need words, that was understood in the silent glances and shared experiences. It was a connection made by surviving, made stronger by danger, and solidified by the shared struggle to endure. And tested in the harsh desert of Zyrra, where every day was a battle against the elements. It was a connection that would last forever, a bond that time and distance could never break.